Hey guys, welcome back to my lifestyle channel. So on this channel, I talk a little bit about my journeys through life. I also talk about beauty, tips and tricks, moving, trying to find a home, a lot of other things. So if you are interested in this one, which as you can tell by the title is about my fertility journey, then keep on watching. This is just specific for my journey. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna work for somebody else or that it's not gonna work for somebody else. I'm not an expert by any means, I'm not a physician, so these are just my personal views and opinions on what I went through most recently. The reason why I wanted to do this video, actually, let's start with that, is because while I was going through this entire process of trying to get pregnant, it feels really lonely after a certain point when you start to not get pregnant, I guess, is the point where you start to feel very lonely. So I didn't feel like I could really reach out to anybody because I didn't want anybody to keep asking me, are you pregnant? Are you pregnant now? Are you pregnant now? I didn't want that constant pressure because I already had so much pressure on myself. And I feel like my husband and me both had pressure on ourselves. So I didn't want that. So I thought at the time, well, I don't really want anyone to keep asking me. So what I did was that I went on YouTube and I went on Instagram and I went on forums on what to expect, and like just a bunch of women and men talking about infertility and talking about how much it's affected their lives. And it really spoke to me because it's such a huge community and we're all there for each other. It was just such a great outlet for me because I really needed somebody at that time, and I just took to the internet and it honestly really helped me. So I told myself I want to be transparent when it comes to this journey because I know that there's someone going through what we just went through out there, and it's really going to help them, or at least help them a little bit. That's how I feel about it. And then starting off, let's just start off with, when we were trying to conceive, TTC, right? I've learned all the lingo from being on all those online forums, but we started trying to conceive about a month or two after we got married. I am now 33, at the time was 32. The reason why we wanted to start right away is because I was like, well, I don't know if it's gonna take right away or how long it's gonna take, and we knew that we were ready. So anyway, fast forward to, we were just a couple who thought that we were gonna get ready on the first try. We were being optimistic, honestly. So when we didn't get pregnant on the first try, it wasn't that big of a deal. It was kind of like, well, yeah, I guess it was kind of unrealistic to expect that. I just thought, okay, well, let's just keep going. Let's just keep trying, whatever. Obviously, it's just been a month. So I also kind of kept talking myself out of it and saying, oh, I also had just taken my IUD out, which is my form of birth control, for the past year. And maybe it's gonna take my body a little bit back to my normal cycle, which it did actually take a while. And I actually asked my doctor and she said, no, you're totally fertile already, like as soon as you take it out. So just start trying whenever you want. Anyway, so I did start trying, and when we were trying, the months and months go by, and even though it's in the beginning, every single time that you get a negative pregnancy test, it's really upsetting. No matter if it's your first time, your 5th time, or your 15th time, it's still really upsetting because you really want to get pregnant. The more and more months that went by, I realized how much I really wanted it, and so did my husband. And I just started to I started to try everything. And I think that we've all gone through this where we are just like, okay, fine, let me do the fertility diet. So I did the fertility diet. It was like high in blueberries or some other stuff, and I just tried all that, and I tried to be super healthy when I was eating. I stopped drinking alcohol because I just wanted to feel like my body was really healthy. I had heard that drinking alcohol wasn't good for trying to conceive, so I did stop that for about 6 months. I think I didn't drink at all. We tried everything under the sun. We tried spermicides, which, if you've ever heard of these are just like a lubricant that during intercourse helps, or is supposed to help, the sperm more easily get through the canal and then get to where it's supposed to go. My husband tried vitamins like the something root. I'll link it down below, the vitamins he tried, but it seemed a little futile because as the months went by, we kept getting negatives, and it was gut-wrenching. If I'm being honest, it's just absolutely awful. You just feel like this is never gonna happen. And that's how I felt. I felt like this is just not in the cards for me. It's not gonna happen. And then you start thinking like, what's wrong with me? And then, your partner starts thinking that, and then you start fighting, and then you're like, it's this, and then it's that, and it's our stress, and And it's just like this whole horrible emotional time that you're going through just trying to get pregnant and trying to expand your family, which is a beautiful thing, but can become quite stressful. And it was very stressful because I did get a lot of questions as to like, oh, when are you guys going to start trying? Or like, you know, you're married now, are you going to have a baby? And it was always like, I always tried to deflect like, hey, we just got married a year ago. Like, let's not talk about this kind of thing. But I just really felt like already the pressure, and and nobody even knew we were having problems. By this point, I want to say that it was probably 6 months that we had been trying, and I was starting to get a little bit frustrated. So we started trying all these different things, and I started to wonder what was wrong, but I didn't make an appointment to go anywhere because of the fact that my OBGYN had told me to try for a year. We weren't over the age of 35, which is, I guess, the age that you can go see a specialist at 6 months. But we were still in that little bracket where we were a little bit younger, and they said, wait a year. It takes up to a year for a regular couple trying to conceive to get pregnant. So I thought, okay, fine. I'll wait a year, which seems like forever and was forever. And I kept getting negative after negative. And every single time I always thought, I'm pregnant. Like I thought for sure I'm pregnant this time. I felt my breasts hurt, or like I felt my uterus move or something like that, or tighten, or I have cramps, but they're way sooner than my period. And there were so many signs and symptoms, and I wanted it so bad that I really started to manifest thinking that it was happening. And once again got let down getting my period, and it just broke my heart, and it broke my husband's heart, and it was such a hard time. And I know what you're going through, because it's impossible to explain to somebody unless they're going through it just how difficult and challenging of a time it is for you and your significant other and your body. So moving on from that, we finally hit the year mark. Well, actually we hit 11 months. We were going into our 12th cycle, and I called a fertility specialist to make an appointment. I made the appointment, I got online, started filling out the patient paperwork and everything, and then I started freaking out. I was like, I want to do this naturally. I want to do this in my home with my husband. I don't want people poking at me, prying at me. I can't do it. I'm not ready. I just can't do it. So I called and I canceled the appointment. And I wasn't ready, I guess. And it was weird because I felt like I let myself down, because I felt like I let my husband down, because I had said that I would start trying more than I could, aka going to this fertility specialist and try to figure out what's wrong, because it had already taken us a year. And then I kind of chickened out, I guess, but that's totally okay, because we were about to embark in a whole new journey that we had never experienced before, and it was scary. So this was now our 12th month. What I did was I made an appointment with my OBGYN to see if I could get on Clomid. That was my mindset. I was like, well, I'll just get on Clomid. This is a drug that stimulates ovulation. And I thought maybe all my ovulation kits and everything I had been trying wasn't working. When I went to my OBGYN, I forget what they called it, but it was like a parenting or starting a family consultation that I had with the nurse practitioner. And when I went in there, one of the girls who I think was training was like, oh, so we're having a baby. And that like just made me feel so bad, because I was like, no, that's exactly why I'm here, because I can't get pregnant. Like, no, we're not having a baby. And I felt kind of bad because I was like, no, that's why I'm here. I can't get pregnant. So I'm trying to plan it. And she was like, yeah, I meant like, we're going to have one. We're starting the process. Obviously, she didn't know anything about it, but you know, when you're trying to conceive and it's been forever, everything anyone says just really bothers you, because sometimes people are just ignorant to it. They haven't gone through it. That's totally okay. But it's hard to hear, you know, if I hear one more time that, oh, relax, it's just going to happen for you, I'm going to like lose my mind. Or have you tried this? Or have you tried that? Or have you tried laying down? Or like, I got pregnant this way. And then they'll also say like, well, is it you? Is something wrong with you? Is something wrong with your husband? And it's just like, stop. You don't know what you're talking about. I mean, I feel like I barely even know what I'm talking about. So let's just not do this. But anyway, she said that. I got over it. I was a little emotional, obviously. And then the nurse practitioner came in and she kind of just went through the motions. How long have you been trying to conceive? Do you get regular periods, etc.? And kind of just told me what to do. She told me you should get an HSG test, which is like a really long word for something I can't pronounce, but an HSG test basically tests your fallopian tubes and your uterus, make sure everything that is clear and there is the path for the semen is clear. So she said that we should do that I should do that. And then she also said that I should go see a fertility specialist, and she gave me a list. So from that list, I picked my fertility specialist. This was actually what I really did before, and I made the appointment and I canceled the appointment. And then when we finally made the second appointment, I kept it. And so me and my husband went to the fertility specialist scared. So as far as tests go, the first test that we did was with my husband's primary care physician. She sent for a semen analysis. And that semen analysis, from the counts that we could tell, nobody read it to us. They just sent it to us in the mail. It looked like super low on certain parts, high on other parts, and it just didn't make sense. But we kind of thought maybe that's the problem. My OBGYN said that they wouldn't put me on Clomid without the HSG, and I didn't want to do the HSG. So I said, fine, we'll just go to the fertility specialist. So my husband and I went to the fertility specialist appointment, and I was pretty scared because, you know, like I said, I had all these reservations about going and like not doing it the natural way or whatever. When we met with him, it was fine. He just went through the motions as well. And he was just asking us, you know, how old we were, how long we've been trying to conceive. And then he showed us a chart basically saying like, there's only 3 times in an entire year when you can conceive. And the chances of hitting those 3 times are pretty slim because of the fact that you have to be perfectly ovulating and then basically try to have intercourse right around then. And so it's a hard thing to get pregnant around that time. Maybe, yeah, for some people it's not as hard, but in reality for the average couple, it can be. So he looked at my husband's semen analysis and said they're using way older levels to gauge this analysis. So he actually said it all looks perfect. So everything we had been thinking for like almost 2 weeks that was the issue, it turned out to not be the issue. So he said, no, these semen analysis actually look fine. So then he basically said that he wanted to run some tests. He also suggested I take the HSG test. And then he also said for my husband to take a semen analysis test. Now, what we did, basically started a medicated round with Clomid. And after that Clomid that we took, I believe, for 4 or 5 days, then we would have a trigger shot. So it tells your body to ovulate. So that trigger shot within 24 to 36 hours or something around the lines of that is going to make you ovulate. So that way they can control ovulation and do the IUI. Now, you might be wondering, what is an IUI? This is a fertility treatment for couples that can do IUI. Now, there are certain couples who can or cannot, depending on their case. So it's a case-by-case scenario. We were lucky enough that we were able to do IUIs. And basically what an IUI is intrauterine insemination. So what they do is that they take the sample of sperm that your husband provides, or a donor, whoever you're using, and they take that sample and they wash the sperm. So when they wash the sperm, what they're doing is that they're leaving the strongest swimmers, they're leaving the most motile sperm, the highest quality sperm. That's what's left over. And then they count that. So you basically have like super sperm or whatever you have gotten. Some people don't have enough sperm count to do the IUI, so sometimes those can move right onto IVF. So it really depends. There's so many different factors, and I do not know enough about that. But what we did was we had the Clomid round, and my doctor does back-to-back IUIs. So what he does is he does 5 days of Clomid, trigger shot, so that you ovulate, and then you come in the next day and you do an IUI. Then after that, the following day, you also do an IUI. This is if you've ovulated. If you still haven't ovulated, I believe they just do one. Both times, because we did 4 IUIs, 2 back-to-backs. Both times I had ovulated, so they allowed us to do the back-to-back IUIs. So we did the Clomid. The Clomid made me feel really hormonal, It was not the funnest time for my husband. I was totally on edge. Everything stressed me out. I was very bitchy on it, to be honest, which they told me could happen. And I didn't feel bad. I did get a couple headaches, but I'm pretty much prone to headaches. So after those were done, we went and we did our trigger shot. Thankfully, they were really local to us, so we were able to go a lot because you have to have quite a few appointments with them. So then it was the day for the IUI, and my husband gave his sample. They told us what the count was. The count wasn't too high. They like to see it over 10, I believe, and it was at 4.5 million or something, but they said not to worry about it, that, you know, it was on the lower end, but, you know, that was after the wash. So then they did the IUI, which to me wasn't very painful. I do have a high pain tolerance. However, I wouldn't say that it was painful. I would just say that it was a little bit of cramping. It's just a long little cylinder, like a long string, or I don't know how to it looks like a catheter, but it goes through the vagina, and what they do is they inject the sperm, and they're basically going through the vagina into the uterus and making sure that it's all the way in there so that they can inject the sperm and it can have like basically a shorter passage to get to through the fallopian tubes and then to the egg that's waiting there for it. So they did that one that day. I didn't think it was that bad. Everybody was so nice in the office. Honestly, I had gotten to know them. They had gotten to know me. And I didn't feel like it was that scary time when it was so invasive. I felt pretty at ease. I felt like I was taking control of our infertility, and I was really trying, and it's super empowering. I can't tell you, once you get over that hurdle, you really feel like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to try, and I'm going to give it my all. And that's how I felt that day. I felt very, I felt very optimistic too. So then we came back the next day and we did another IUI, and his count was lower, or the second time was the 4, and then the first time was the 7 or something like that. So I think the first time he was 7 million, and then the second time he was 4 million. And they do say that it goes down, obviously, because you had just given a sample the day before. But of course we still went through, and it really just takes one, and that is the truth. It really just takes one. So we did the second one, and we went home, and I think it was my husband's 33rd birthday. So we just had a party that weekend and stuff, and we just kind of tried not to stress too much about it, but obviously it's all we could think about. And then as the cycle went through and everything, I was just really hoping that I was pregnant. I once again was symptom spotting, which we all do, and honestly, I'd love to give you a tidbit as to how not to do it, but it's impossible. I symptom spotted all the time up until when I was actually pregnant. So once we unfortunately did not get pregnant, that was really, really hard. So going through your first failed fertility treatment attempt is gut-wrenching. I literally, like, it, just thinking about it kind of makes me emotional, because you try so hard and you go through so many tests and you go through so much medication, and to still have someone basically tell you it didn't work, or like to have your body like not receive it, it's really hard, and it's harder than all the other negatives. But at this point, you're kind of understanding what it takes to get pregnant for you. We had undiagnosed infertility, so they didn't actually know what was wrong at this point. And then I told myself, fine, it's time. I'm going to get the HSG test. Like, I got to try everything. So then I did. I got the HSG test, and I'm not going to lie, it was painful. It was uncomfortable. I had to breathe through it. My husband was behind me. I'll show you guys a picture of this machine. It's pretty daunting. It looks really big, and the doctors and the nurse and everybody was super great. But it is a very uncomfortable procedure. Thankfully, it's pretty short. It feels like forever when you're there, but it is pretty short, and I didn't have too bad of cramps afterwards. They do tell you to take like some ibuprofen or something beforehand, so I did that. And then I just kind of went home and relaxed and then hope for the best. The good thing is, when they do the HSG test, gosh, that's hard to say. When they do the HSG test, you can actually physically see in the monitor next to you if the dye is going through. So as they're doing everything, they're explaining it to you, and you're seeing through the fallopian tubes if the dye is like coming out. So once I was done, he kind of showed me more and showed my husband, and he showed, this is what I'm looking for and this is what's happening. So he showed that there was no obstruction. My fallopian tubes were both open and that my uterus looked great. So that's the good thing. I was so relieved. My husband was so relieved. We were really thankful that that also was not the issue. It didn't resolve what our issue was, but that doesn't mean that we wanted something to be wrong. And that also doesn't mean that you do have a blocked fallopian tube that you can't get pregnant. You absolutely can. There's so many alternatives. So that is not the end all be all. It's just a test to kind of see like, where do you stand? Sorry, I'm just getting so thirsty from talking. So we did the HSG test, and then we let our doctor know, and they scheduled the next Clomid round. Now on this round, they upped my Clomid because the first round, I think I did 2. I'm not so sure. I can't remember, and I couldn't find it in my phone notes. But the first round, I only ovulated 1 egg. I should have said that, but basically what they want you to do is ovulate 2 eggs. 3 is too much, 1's too little, 2 is perfect. So I only ovulated 1 egg. I usually always did, so it was really a letdown for me because I thought, well, this is the same thing that always happens. But then this time I asked them to up the Clomid. I didn't feel any different on the Clomid. I was still pretty bitchy, like I said. But other than that, I kind of felt the same. And it went from 100 to 150 milligrams, I believe, if I'm correct. And this time, when we went in for ultrasound to see if I had any eggs producing, this time they saw 2 follicles. So they saw one that was a little bit smaller and that one that was ready. So it was like 18 millimeters and I think like 22 millimeters. So they said, I see 2 follicles. They did also check it the next day, I believe, and saw that the follicles had grown. And then they wanted me to do the trigger shot. So we did the trigger shot at that moment. And when we did the next ultrasound, they said that both of the follicles had actually ovulated, which is great. That meant I had, in my mind, a double chance to get pregnant, which also increases somewhat your chance of multiples. Not a lot, but somewhat. More so 3 follicles or up would increase your chance of multiples. But at this point, I was just thinking, oh wow, I have a chance. It was a follicle on each side. I never really ovulate from one of my sides. I usually ovulate just from one side. So it was pretty great for me to hear that I had ovulated from both sides. I really thought my other ovary is just lazy and it never wants to like give me an egg. But this time it actually did. So that was good. So I was really optimistic. I was also kind of negative and thought, well, I don't know, maybe we won't get pregnant this time. I just didn't want to get my hopes up. So we did the 5 days of Clomid, and then we went in for IUI after our trigger shot. My husband's count was quite higher. I will tell you, I'm not saying that this helps everybody, but that he did not drink. He also had a dry month, and then he also took his vitamins, which again, I'll link below, and he also stopped taking coffee. I think, yeah, he stopped taking coffee. So he didn't have any caffeine and he drank tons of water. So we really tried to like do all the things best for him, and his counts did go up. I don't know if this varies month to month. Maybe it helped, maybe it didn't. But for us, the count went up quite a bit. So they went up enough to what they wanted them to be. I think it was like at 9 or 10 million. And then the next day it was at like 4 or 5. On the second IUI day. So we were really optimistic at that point, just thinking, wow, you know, we got a really good count. It was much higher than last time. So we really thought we might have a chance this time. I was still a little apprehensive. I was a little negative because I didn't want to get my hopes up, to be honest. I mean, we're all going through this fertility treatments. You never want to just be like, yeah, I'm totally going to get pregnant, because then the letdown is so much harder. But it's okay to get excited, because I think that's the only thing that keeps us going, is having that hope that one day it'll happen, and it will. It'll happen for all of us one day, be it, you know, IUI, IVF, adoption, a surrogate. Like one day there's going to be that baby for us. So we went on vacation after the second IUI, and these were a little bit more painful. I'm not quite sure why, but they were. And after the second IUI, we just I mean, I was thinking about it all the time. I was trying to symptom spot, but I really felt normal. And then I got a cold, and I came back, and my sister-in-law was like, well, I got a cold when I got pregnant. And I was like, okay, well, I think I just got a cold from traveling. And lo and behold, I think it might have been my first symptom, because I did end up getting pregnant. So I was very excited, and I took the test. And at this point, I didn't know if the HSG was completely out of my system. I wasn't as well versed. So I thought maybe my positive was a false positive. But when you're doing fertility treatments, you have to go back in during a certain point of your cycle to check if you're pregnant and check your progesterone levels. So they asked me if I had taken a test. I said yes, that I had gotten a positive. And then they do their own test, a blood test. And then what they do is that they call you and they let you know. Now, this seemed the call that would never come because it just took forever, but it was actually the same day. And they did tell me that I was pregnant and that my progesterone levels look good. I am going to make another video about the first trimester, and then, you know, everything that you have to go through when you are in fertility treatments once you do get pregnant, because you are monitored at a different level and you have a lot more appointments than anybody else who would otherwise just go see their OBGYN after 12 weeks. So if you want to watch that video, I'll have that soon. This video was really just to focus on the fertility treatments, the process, the journey, and just the emotional aspect of it all. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I'm an open book, so please comment down below or give this video a thumbs up and just ask me anything. I am more than happy to tell you anything about it and message you. I'm here to support you because I can't tell you enough how much so many women supported me, and they were there for me throughout this process when I felt like I was completely alone. And I just want to tell you, you're not alone, and you know that baby dust is coming. So thanks so much for watching my video. I'll see you guys on the next one.